Day 2, Internet. How are you doing? Tuesday, noon Eastern Time. Hope you guys are having a fantastic start to your week. Do us a favor as people are getting tuned in here. Comment below with what your favorite part was from day 1, your favorite tip. We covered a decent amount of information yesterday, nothing too crazy. And then also you'll notice right here, we had our fantastic web team. Shout out to Keith. Created some much more manageable link to access the recording. So if you missed day 1, no big deal. Go to PlayYourCourt.com/recordings. You can pick up the recording there as well as the workbook that we're going to be following along with here. Looking forward to seeing you guys comment below with not only where you're from, which I'm seeing Steve from LA, Steve S. from Venice, Florida, Brandon from DC. Comment your favorite learning from yesterday, if you had one.
Or your least favorite.
Yeah, or your least favorite.
Sometimes feedback is good. It's how we improve.
That's right.
Especially if it's a segment that's got covered, and the more the merrier.
That's right. Let it rip. While you guys are coming in here and throwing your comments in the comment section, I'm going to do a very, very quick recap of day 1. Again, if you want the more in-depth, you know where to go. But super quick, yesterday we covered the continental grip. The big takeaway there, we know we've all heard about the continental grip. The big takeaway there was the heel pad, not just the index knuckle. It needs to be on bevel 2. Then we got into the serve stance. We talked about how our feet should point in a line towards the net post to get that hip back and guarantee that we get that rotation. We talked about the penalty box drill and the importance of getting that arm way up there and keeping it up there to create the rear pelvic tilt. And I think that might be, oh, no. Then we also talked about how to toss the ball. We talked about different preferences, how to grip the ball, ice cream cone versus tulip. We talked about how you need to let go at eye level. And we gave you guys some drills for all this stuff that's in the workbook here. And again, that comes with the recordings right here. All right, let's get into some of our comments here. Brandon said heel pad was mind-blowing. As we've seen, that doesn't surprise you, Brandon. I've seen a lot of people at a very high level of play make this change and just suddenly serve 15 miles per hour faster because their heel pad's on bevel 1.
You know what the best part of that comment is that Brennan got in there and practiced it yesterday.
I love that.
Because it was mind-blowing. I mean, like, to be that impressed, you had to put some reps in and be like, oh, this right. Is a light bulb moment. So
that's right. And guys, just a friendly reminder, go grab your racket if you don't have it right now. Make sure you have it. And I think without further ado, shall we day 2 up? Let's get it.
I will start by saying this may be the most important day that we're going to cover. This is if you're struggling with waiter's tray, limited racket drop, early internal rotation, meaning that when you go to hit the ball, your elbow is on the dominant side of your body, not on the non-dominant side. Today's the day. Today's the day we're going to really work on fixing that stuff and improving your serve.
Where all the magic happens. Pay attention.
All right, so day 2, this is the right to left, and this is the initial move that your racket's going to take. We'll jump into the video right away. So this, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. A lot of players struggle with this because of the aesthetic. We're going to ask you for the next couple of days to limit the racket and ball coming together. So what I'm talking about is most of us when we serve, we like to start like this.
Up together, down together.
Down together and up together. And if you've heard, down together, up together, it's an antiquated tip. We don't want things working together, things speed up, you can't control the toss. What we really want to do right now is just work on the joint position of the hitting arm. So we're going to start in an abbreviated stance, and that's where this comes in with the right to left. So the right to left here.
You said abbreviated stance. Abbreviated.
Yeah.
That's the right word?
Meaning,
motion?
Yeah, I'm going to show them here, but just meaning that you're not trying to go through this full pendulum. You're not going to do your normal stroke. All right. So here you can see, like, I bring the racket and ball together because this is how most of us start our serve. But this is the part that we're talking about abbreviated. I'm going to bring my racket up so that it stays on the dominant side of my body. And this part's really important, that the wrist is nice and loose so that the racket lists below my wrist, right?
It's pointing down, right?
Yep. So if it was like really firm, then remember yesterday we talked about how tension is a killer. Right? We want to keep things super, super fluid. So this is kind of your opportunity now to test that, to keep things nice and loose from here. If your wrist is passive, it's loose. If it's firm, like you're picking up a frying pan, you've got some tension going on, right? You want to eliminate that tension.
It's easy as true.
So the first move, this is relatively simple. You're going to just pretend like you're saluting. So here, all I'm doing is I'm bringing the racket to my forehead so that it operates about 3 or 4 inches above my forehead, maybe higher, whatever's comfortable. And this is just the first move of the right to left. All right,
maybe get a little zoom there. I think I see, but can never hurt. There you go.
Go back a little bit. So it's just this move here. All right.
Talk about pretending you're shielding yourself from the rain or saluting.
Saluting was the one that we went to because everybody knows if you're saluting, you're simply bringing the palm to the forehand. And so in real time, like if I'm here and I'm getting ready to serve, I'm just getting comfortable with the palm down. That's the big piece here. You'll notice here that I've got my palm down, and then bring the hand forward. You would never obviously salute with the palm up or whatever. That'd be weird.
Keaton says knock the cone off the head. That's certainly instruction we see all over the internet. Ryan Reedy got kind of famous for the knock the cone off the head.
He's absolutely improved a tip that's been around for a long time with the birthday hat because you don't have to pick up a cone over and over and over.
Indeed.
So the second part of this, because knocking off the cone is really, really good, but not every server knocks the cone off the head. Yes, Federer does, but there's plenty of others that do not. Their racket stays pretty far away from their head. But they all move in this right to left motion. Now, the second piece here is about getting this to work with the tossing arm.
Zoom in a little bit again if you don't mind for the people.
See that pretty good.
Steve, every day is Adidas shirt day.
That's right. All right. So here, again, I'm just reiterating. Get comfortable with this movement. And now what you're going to do is when you work through the tossing arm, you're going to see that the tossing arm slightly leads the movement. All right. But now what we're going to do is when we're doing the saluting motion, we're going to focus on getting the racket in the hitting arm on the non-dominant side of the body. So if I'm started like this, now when I initiate my toss, I want to drive my elbow back. I've heard a lot of different tips. Salzenstein calls this elbow the enemy. I think that's a clever way to remember it. If you think of it as if somebody was coming up to grab your wallet, because back in the olden days, we used to carry our wallet in our back pocket. If somebody was trying to steal it,
I still carry my wallet in my back pocket. Am I not supposed to do that anymore?
You carry a wallet?
Yeah.
Just that on the back of my phone. George Costanza. All right, so, but in this idea, it's like you would throw an elbow this way. So that's where we really want to start connecting this movement, is as the arm goes up, you're getting the racket moving right to left, and the right to left is this. And then the elbow ends up on the non-dominant side of the body. So I'm just going to let this play. I'll put it in slow-mo so that you can see the next one. You kind of see the movement in real time. I'll enlarge it. Tossing arm goes up. There you can see the arm working. And it's going to feel a little unorthodox because especially if you haven't done this before, you're going to be like, this is a total new movement. All right, but there's a reason that we want to be in this joint position, and that's because it's going to keep the palm down. It's going to put you in the proper power position, which is this. My palm is down. The racket has moved from right to left. I'm in a proper power position because the hitting arm is now on the non-dominant side of my body. And from here, I give myself the absolute best chance of the racket getting into an appropriate racket drop from this position. So this is the right to left. Let's take a second. We got any questions on this?
Nothing yet, but now is a good time to ask. Also, if you're left-handed, left to right.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously the instruction remains the same. You would just mirror the image and you'd be using your left hand and saluting with your left hand.
Yep. So this part's really big.
Questions in here if you have them. We're on I think it's almost a 45-second delay. So for all I know, there's already 3 questions in here. But
I'll pull this back up so everybody can see. One more time. Let's give it just a few seconds here. All right, so again, tossing arm,
passive wrist,
everything linked up. So if we have any questions, we're going to answer them at the end. We don't want to get bogged down with too much, but let's move on why the right to left is important, because now it's about how we actually enter into the racket drop. Now, the racket drop, when it happens on the non-dominant side of the body over here, I have the ability of the elbow climbing and the racket getting to this position. I just want to show you this because this is what most of us do. This is the #1 error that we see here in serves. If my grip is wrong, I'm too far over towards the semi-western, all right? Or if just the timing and mechanisms of the serve are wrong, this happens. The elbow comes to the dominant side and the racket falls back in a waiter straight here. And I lose all that power potential because I eliminate it. So here's the best way to fix this. This is going to seem silly, but this is what we call, we got to show them the
workbook.
I just forgot about that. My bad.
Gotcha, bro. You had one job.
You had one job.
One job.
This is the elbow the ball drill. We want to show you this because in the workbook, this is exactly what you're following. The elbow the ball drill. And too often when we're learning the serve, we focus on what the racket's doing. What happens when you think about what the racket's doing is that you start building tension, right? So instead here, we're going to get you to think about what the elbow is doing. And in this drill, you're just taking a ball. You're not, look how low I'm tossing this. The goal here isn't to get it to an optimal level that I can hit the serve. The goal is to give me a target so that my elbow then moves up towards the ball. So as my elbow climbs up to the ball, look at that coinkadink. Look at that racket drop. Right? Like that is what we're talking about. And it's all about giving my elbow the movement or the target rather towards the ball that creates a movement that allows my racket to drop.
Yeah, not to poo-poo on other folks' instruction, but if you have a coach telling you to place your racket down your back or touch the back of your ponytail, we don't agree, right? Like our mindset is don't think about putting your racket places. Think about how to activate the muscles in your body to create what you're trying to create.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because it's like a cartwheel, right? Like, have you ever done a cartwheel and been like, man, I really hope my right arm comes around and hit the ground?
About placing my right arm mid-motion.
So I'm going to play this and let you see the next one. And this doesn't have to be amazing, right? Like you don't have to hit the ball every single time with your elbow. I don't make perfect contact on every one of these. I was a little bit up on the forearm, but I'm giving myself directions as to where the elbow should go. And that's what we see here. All right. So let's just start back here for just a moment and look at how this is going to work. So I've started a bit abbreviated. As the toss goes up, the racket starts moving right to left. And now from here, as my elbow goes up to the ball, the racket then gets into the racket drop. All right. And some of you are like, hey, what about the legs? That's what we're going to talk about next, because the legs are the driving force.
Please
allow me. Yeah. Breaking it.
Nothing fell on the drill. We let them know, like, the drill is to elbow the ball. The expectation is that you might not. We just want to get the elbow flaring up. And refer to the workbook for exact instructions on what to do when you get out there and want to practice this stuff.
Okay, so the pulse-up drill. We know that the legs are responsible for 50% of power on the serve. Can they be more? Yeah, sure. But I think a lot of times the idea is that it's about jumping. It's not. It's about loading energy. But what's important as we take a look at the Curio serve here, I know he's not playing a whole lot of tennis, but when he was, he had the best serve on tour, outside of maybe the serve bots. But let's just take a look at what we're seeing here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit.
There you go.
There we go. So as Nick goes through his motion, and right here is a pinpoint, this is where you're going to start seeing the right to left as a righty, okay? How do we know that he's loading energy through the ground? Well, because his knees are bent, right? The knees being bent there means that he's loaded energy through the ground. Now, as he starts to fire up, you can see that the racket moving through the right to left. And from this point, what you're going to see is that when the racket falls down his back, it's the byproduct of his energy going up. Right? So his legs straighten out, and there's the racket drop. And there's the elbow going up to the ball. Let's pretend the ball is here. Now we can see the elbow driving up to the ball. Right. All right. So how do we get the legs to time? How do we time this with the legs? Well, we're going to use what we call the pulse-up drill. And the pulse-up drill, what we were just showing you a moment ago, is...
May I? Or do you want to see this?
Yeah. I think we teased it. Refer to the workbook. It's going to give you instructions here. But the workbook, the video here, the pulse-up is about activating the legs, because what we want is this. We want the feet to fire the hip, to fire the hitting elbow.
I've been coaching tennis for a pretty long time before I actually met Nate Dogg here. One of the best pieces of instruction I've ever heard is actually from Nate. I know that'll shock you because I don't often say nice things about Nate on the internet. But
I heard it here first.
I heard him say it in one of our serve workshops where he said you need to be thinking about pushing your feet into the ground and creating force down and not thinking about jumping up off the ground. And I think he used the Superman example a fair bit. Like old school Superman, like powers down into the ground. You're not thinking about the popping up. You're thinking about creating force into the ground, and then that push off the ground, not necessarily the jump. The push off the ground is what's creating the leg power that we need you to have serve over 100 miles an hour. You don't even have to leave the ground with your feet if you're getting that explosion up.
Yep. Yeah. We know this because there's people that have had severe knee injuries. We have older adults that no longer have the ability to jump. And you can look on tour and see it. Take a look at Sam Wawrinka's serve. You can slide a credit card under his feet. Still hitting $120, $130 when he wants to. So here's the exercise. You're going through kind of the motion of the right to left.
Give him a zoomie.
Really focus on bending the legs here. All right, that's the big piece. And then you're going to drive your elbow up in the manner that we just talked about when you're aiming towards the ball. And then you're going to hold this position as it gets the racket to flip. You always talk about a good a weightlifting exercise with this.
Yeah, like the tricep extension, I guess. So like imagine your racket in this scenario, instead of weighing 12 ounces, weighs 30 pounds. And you're not strong enough to just do a tricep extension with 30 pounds. You'd have to get your legs into it. You'd have to bend your legs and use more than just your arm to float that weight up. And that's kind of what the pulse-up drill is all about here. It's very similar to a very heavy tricep extension where you're going to activate your legs to get that weight floating up.
So here's it all put together, right? We start in the abbreviated motion. We focus on the racket moving right to left. And you can see as the racket moves right to left, I'm also getting into the knee bend. And from here, the racket starts moving right to left. Now, at this point, as my energy goes up, the goal here is then that the racket comes down. And you'll see that happen there as the racket straightens out. And this is how you want to put this together. You want to start with the right to left exercise. Make sure that you're focusing on getting the elbow on the non-dominant side of the body. So it's this. Focus on getting your elbow up to the ball, and then really put it together by using your legs to drive the elbow. Then with the racket, allow the racket to come all the way around.
I would imagine this is where you're starting to have some questions. Drop them in the comments section. Again, we're going to answer them all at the end. I see a couple down there already. Syncing all this up, it's not easy. It requires really some attention here. You can sort of see why. Pause it for a second, just in case that's overbearing my voice here. You can kind of still split this up into 5 days. Like, I think there was a coach at the end of a lesson, we have 15 minutes left, trying to talk about this, even while we talked about the toss that we talked about yesterday, and then just hoping that the stance and the continental grip stick, having been brand new. Like, it's just hard, right? So we're pulling these pieces out like this so that you can focus on the individual slices of this. They're going to make it work. This is maybe the most important slice, because that racket drop, I mean, look, baseline, you have to have a continental grip, but without that racket drop, you're really never going to get the type of power that most of you are here for. So day 2 is about as important as there is. All 5 days are important, but I think this is like, if I can only choose one day for you to watch, to sort of guarantee you get the most lift and power, it would be what we just covered.
And I think it's tough for the coaches, right? Because like when we get out and practice serves, like we want to see it to believe it. We want a result. So it's like it's very tough to kind of compartmentalize it and be like, we're going to just focus on stuff. It's very like Karate Kid, right? You're like, paint the fence. Why am I painting the fence?
Right.
Wax the deck. Why am I waxing the deck, right? And you put it all together and you're like, you have a serve. But that's, unfortunately, the serve is complex enough that is how it needs to be taught.
This is the truth.
All right.
Don't we have, that's day 3. That's all the content for day 2. Look at that. We ran through that.
Yeah, we keep day 2 relatively short because it's really important. We want those 3 exercises to really have some weight, get out there practice.
Small number of exercises, but probably the most important and some of the most difficult that we'll do. So even if you are at home and you can stand up right now with your racket and start practicing this and starting to get the feel how this all connects, do that. Ask us some questions. We're going to open up the floor for Q&A. We've already had a couple people yesterday and DM us before the challenge started today, asking about where you can go to train with us. We don't do a ton of it. But if you go, can you show it on the laptop again? Is that a nuisance? If you go over to our website, PlayYourCourt.com, Your iPad's not connected to the internet. I disagree.
There we go.
So this is already on the page, but if you hit this Explore More button up in the upper right-hand corner, the very first thing that you'll see if you'll just highlight over Explore More. Yeah, I got you right here. And it's private tennis clinics. When you click on that, you're going to land on this page. A lot of cool stuff. We're doing some stuff with the Bryan brothers out in Indian Wells. We've got a serve mastery workshop actually coming up here on October 12th. We had 2 people yesterday sign up from this live stream. There's still 3 spots left. If you are on the East Coast or if you feel like being in Virginia Beach on October 12th, which is coming up in just over a month. And that's all I'm going to do to plug today. Let's open up the floor for Q&A.
Wow, that's it.
I don't know. You thought like, Scott's just going to sell you.
Scott's not trying to sell you anything. Wow.
All right. I'm going to scroll up a bit here. Okay. Steve mentioned, so both the hands come up at the same time. This was during the instruction. We were talking about trying to sync the abbreviated racket motion with the toss. Do you want to talk a little bit about this? Show it on video, maybe?
We want the toss, and everyone's a little bit different, but you want the tossing arm to lead a little bit. It doesn't have to be a ton. I mean, Nick's arm leads. There's a massive lag. So when we hear the lag, when it's referenced to the serve, what we're talking about is how much does the tossing arm lead the hitting hand? If you look back at Pete Sampras, Thomas Burditch, the lag was massive. Then you have players that, like Federer. Let me pull this up real quick. You have Federer where it's just very slight. Like you can see that the tossing hand and the racket start working more together, where the tossing arm is definitely leading, but it's just leading by a little bit. My advice is to always have the tossing hand lead just a pinch, right? So if I'm starting in this motion, let's say I go Roddick and I put it together. My first move is the racket starts to move to the side of my body. I want the tossing arm to then work as the racket plays catch up.
And there's a little bit of personal preference here, but I tend to agree. That's going to be what we would start you out with template if we've never seen anything. Right?
Especially when you're trying to break habits, right? So like if everything moves together, good luck trying to figure out what's breaking down, because things that are moving are going to stay the same. Like things in motion stay in motion.
Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Easy for me to say.
So let the tossing arm lead would be my advice.
Pressure of hand on the racket. Sorry for my English. You're totally fine, my dude. I assume this means pressure of hand. So I mentioned this yesterday. It's sort of a silly analogy, but when you're holding the racket, imagine you're holding a baby bird. You don't want to crush the baby bird, but you don't want him to fly away. And then when you actually extend up and make contact, you are going to squeeze that grip to make sure the racket doesn't fly out of your hand. But the more relaxed you can stay with your grip, the more passive wrist you can create, especially in this right to left drill that we talked about, the better the chances are you're going to get a deep racket drop and really snap through that ball and get the power that you're looking for. Anything you want to add there, my friend?
Nope, got it. That's it.
All right. David says he has the same Adidas shirt as me.
Nice. There you go.
Love it.
Probably looks a little better than you did.
That's not nice. David also says, did they talk about the wrist already? Hope they didn't miss it. We'll do a quick recap.
Yeah.
Talking about the passive racket wrists, I think as it pertains to the right to left drill is probably the way to bring this back.
It doesn't matter what pro I pull up. I'm going to show you Cordy here because he has a really efficient service motion. You can definitely visualize Djokovic, right? Like Djokovic starts with the wrist so passive. That's the big key here. So as Corda works here from the right to left, you just want to put attention to how loose the wrist is. You've always got the wrist lift, allowing the hand to lift just a little bit. And this ensures that tension doesn't build up in the hand. And there you can see the right to left motion as he works to a pinpoint.
So this is weird. This is the second nice thing I'm going to say about you today. This is your lucky Tuesday. It never happens.
So excited.
Nate's a really good coach and like frequently ahead of his time with instruction. So back when did you switch my serve to abbreviated? 5 years? 4 years?
Yeah.
It's been a lot of years ago where Nate was like, you don't have to do like the full long thing. And I was like, man, it looks really dumb if I just go right to here. He's like, oh yeah, like have you ever seen amniotic serve? And then he was like, why don't you pay attention to all of these next gen players coming up? I think a lot of us just think we can't start in this abbreviated motion. There's players on tour that are doing it, and actually most of the men up and coming are getting rid of this pendulum entirely with the racket arm and starting to just go right to here. All that extra stuff isn't really that useful, and I think a lot of us just need permission from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Nate, certainly not me, to just say, hey, that's actually okay, and it actually doesn't hurt anything, and it simplifies the motion, and you're going to have more success. And when you crack 120 mile per hour serve, I don't think anybody's going to make fun of the fact that you didn't have a pendulum.
Yeah, you look at Holger Rune, Alcaraz. I mean, there's a whole crop of players where things are just starting on the right side of the player. You're still building momentum because the right to left is that. So if you put it all together, things would work to the right, and then they come back to the left. That's the momentum. You just don't need it all the way down to your feet, kind of the a la Pete Sampras. Although I'm not knocking Pete. Every time I say this about the breed, people are like, "What about Pete Sampras?" In my opinion,
superhuman rotator.
Yeah, he may not have had the best serve, but he was the best server probably in history. Spot server, most clutch server. I mean, his serve is phenomenal, but they also know anatomically he has a superhuman rotator cuff.
It's like the Michael
super
Phelps
flexible.
tennis.
Yeah,
like,
super flexible rotator cuff.
Webbed feet. All right. Keaton says, I'll just highlight this because I agree. There's so much focus on serving, but trust progression learning. Keaton couldn't agree more. That's why we do this over 5 days.
All facts.
Yolanda says, how fast should your shoulder rotation be? Is it the faster the rotation, the more powerful your serve, or is it from the legs? I'm going to let you feel this one because it's.
So what I would pay attention to is the hip. Right, our buddy Will Hamilton from Fuzzy Old Balls. He's got something out. I think it may be out. If not, it's coming soon. That he did work with Mark Kovacs.
The AI.
Yeah. Well, no. He was just Kovacs was talking about if you look at the biggest serves, the faster the back hip climbs, the faster the serve. Right. So that's really what we're looking at is that. From this motion, the quicker my back hip starts to climb to get me into this catapult, obviously it's going to get my shoulder over shoulder to rotate faster, but it's actually the hip that is really the indicator of how big the serve is. I hope that helps if I follow that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really – it's not like you're going to measure how fast your rotation should be. It's kind of all connected and synced up, right? So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. The legs are the driving force, Yolanda. So the legs have to initiate the hip, and then the hip rising up is going to pull the fever. I always like to call it the quiet before the storm, right? I try to get my students to really like slow everything down and be nice and quiet up to the power position. And then from the power position, it's the storm. It happens very, very fast. Yeah.
Yes, indeedy. Wax the deck. You said wax the deck when you were talking about Karate Kid.
Yeah, wax the deck. No, not on the server. But in order of like learning things patiently. That was
You know how to address that. I was just making funny.
yeah, Daniel Lewis.
Thanks, Troy.
I don't know if did I say wax today? Was that correctly?
Yeah, wax on, wax off, not the deck.
What was it?
I don't remember, but he wasn't waxing the deck.
I think it was the deck.
Wasn't he waxing windshields?
Maybe, I don't know.
Troy, if you remember, tell us what he was waxing in Karate Kid. Or anybody. Thomas C., are you driving the right to left with your wrist and forearm?
Yes. Well, think of it this way, Thomas. So in the beginning, just to get comfortable with the motion, yes, you want to feel it here. And then when we start involving the tossing arm, you want to start feeling it from the elbow driving back. And as the elbow drives back, getting it in combination that it's doing this. So as the elbow pulls back, pulls the hand to here, so that way I can get into a full power position. That's a good question, Thomas, because I think sometimes when we show just this, people are like, oh, yeah, it's just the arm. That's just to get you to learn to feel it. We really want you driving the hip and arm back once you're comfortable with that movement.
Indeed. Steve watching us from Paris, France. Very cool.
Hey, Steve.
Linda saying thanks from Lake Nona, Florida. Scott Nate saying thanks from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
That's right, Lake Nona, home of
USTA World Headquarters, National Campus. All right, Kat says, I struggle with the timing of when to use my legs. I didn't understand exactly when to be pushing down. This is a really common question on this day. It's like the syncing up of like when the arms go up and the legs go down. You or me?
I think the simplest way to do it from the power is starting your power position, and when you toss, and the toss has left your hand and it's reached an ideal spot, focus on loading, right? Like toss, then load.
I'll give you like slightly more beginner instruction, but I think it just really it's a good illustration. If your tossing arm, kind of no matter what the synchronization is of your tossing arm and your racket arm, if your tossing arm comes down, and in this scenario, I'm right-handed, so your left hand, your tossing arm comes down and touches your left thigh as a point of reference, and you imagine you've kind of got like duct tape on the back of your hand, or when you touch your left thigh, it sticks to your leg, and then when you pull that arm up, it's creating the bend in your leg. That's helped, I think, a lot of players that I've worked with find when that bend happens. And it's not exactly perfectly timed, but it's so close that you're like, okay, that's when I get it, right? So like as that arm goes up, or as it's halfway up, as it touches the leg and comes up, that's when those legs should be bending. And I think if you think about stick 'em on your tossing hand and it being stuck to your leg when that racket, or excuse me, when that tossing arm comes down, and then when it comes back up, it pulls that leg with it. That's a really good reference to sort of think about how to sync this all up.
Yeah, that's good.
Jules says, do you keep your wrist pretty loose that whole time? The answer just throughout the entire serve challenge is you should be always keeping your wrist, your grip pressure extremely loose until contact where we're going to get squeezed and snap, right?
Yeah. Slight squeeze to control the head so it doesn't get off center. But it's very slight because the wrist still has to pronate through after the contact. And then when we have it come through, the wrist is still loose. So I think you really want to just focus on keeping it as loose as you can. And the firmness at contact typically happens organically.
This is my favorite question in serve challenge history. Steve from Paris says, are you going to be at the bar, the Nest, in Indian Wells in March?
You know it, Steve.
Yep, we'll be there.
No doubt.
Every year. It is a PlayYourCourt tradition.
Say hello to us if we're there.
Let's see here. When
we're there.
When we're there. It's definitive. Saturday, middle weekend. We'll be there. Those of us in the 70s. So what those of us in the 70s, what about those of us that are in our 70s that cannot bend too much anymore? Me?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, you're just abbreviating. All of the instructions the same. If you can't take a deep knee bend like quarter, that's okay. You still should be able to create, again, that pressure down into the ground with the legs, right? So I think a lot of folks think they need a really deep knee bend to create power from the legs. That's not true. You just need to be pushing into the ground enough to have the ground push back and create some energy.
Yeah, as long as you're fairly limber through the shoulders and you still have some flexibility through the arm, like you can create plenty of pop without having to get particularly low in your knee bend.
Indeed, indeed. MJB, how do I stop myself from dropping my serve arm? Is it the toss or the timing or both? I'm hurting my shoulder. I assume you're meaning when the elbow's clamping down in here. I tore my rotator cuff at age 14 or 15 because I did that mistake where my racket would come up, I would come down and clamp my arm. MJB, I think that's what you're talking about. If not, I'm sorry, but what's your best tip for preventing that arm clamping down?
I would go Caroline Garcia, Sarah Ronnie. I would serve from my power position. I would actually serve with my arm up like this and try to get it back. And I would focus on tossing and keeping my arm in this position. I went through that for a while as a young man. Just trying to kind of
hundreds of decades ago.
Yeah, thousands of decades ago. But from here, there's a lot less things that can go wrong than trying to put it all together. It's okay. If Caroline Garcia can do it, we can do it too. She's on tour.
Nobody makes fun of her serve at all.
Yeah, I mean, hell, Jay Berger, whoever remembers Jay Berger, that dude had a crazy serve. Was top 10, was a Grand Slam champion. If I'm not mistaken, I think he beat Agassi at the French at one point. But he started with this racket here and tossed the ball up and hit it. And he was a professional player.
Yep. You can't argue with somebody serving 120 miles an hour. I will say the fastest way to have rotator cuff surgery is to clamp your racket elbow into your body. Please don't do that if you're watching this. That'll save you a lot of pain. The car wasn't even the windshield. He's right. He's waxing the car.
Wax the car. There we go.
Wax the car.
Daniel LaRusso.
Not the deck, not the windshield.
Yeah,
You're both wrong. Yeah. Perfect.
He did something in the deck.
Stained it. All right. Peter would like to know, should I be trying to pull my hitting shoulder back, contracting my lats and rotator cuff muscles in the trophy position?
That's a good question. I like that, Peter. So you can think of it a bit to where the scapular, up here pulls together, but you don't want to actively have that pinch. It happens kind of organically, but it's not something to where don't think of it like you're flexing in a competition, right? But I think that's a really good way of making sure that the elbow gets back, that if you feel the scapular get that little bit of a pinch, right? But I want to make a habit of consistently trying to pinch it.
Yeah, and like Nate said, don't feel like you're flexing back. All right. Anitra says, not sure if it is coming up, but should the non-dominant arm tuck in or swing out after hitting the ball? We're going to talk a lot about that. Day 4. You want to give her just a quick answer?
Yeah, I mean the quick answer is that it tucks, and then it may or may not swing out, but it always tucks. We always want the tossing arm to tuck because it's the left side as a righty. It slows down, the right side will spin up. It's reversed for a lefty. But you do see players like Dominic Thiem, myself, that after the serve has been hit, it'll come through and the arm will fire off back, but it only fires back after it's been tucked.
This is true. Guys, that was the last question. It wouldn't be a Serve Challenge live stream if I didn't mention to you that you would be silly not to grab this workbook and the recordings for the whole week. Again, we're going to turn all this stuff into a course. It's going to cost $200 starting Friday night. So go buy this, please. Don't do it for us. Do it for you. I mean, look, we're a for-profit company, so $49 is great, but far more important for you.
1,003, 996. That's everybody leaving.
Everybody's leaving. Yeah, I get
it.
I'm not even pitching though. I am pitching. I'm pitching directly. But if you don't buy this, you're just messing up. We literally priced it 75% off to make sure you actually do this in-game power on your serve. So please go grab this if you haven't already. Day 3, we are getting into rhythm, how the racket moves, rhythm.
Yeah, putting it all together and the rhythm of the serve. Fluidity, if you will.
That's right. All right, guys, that's all we got here for day 2. We will see you tomorrow, day 3, Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. And if you can't make that, you know what to do. Grab the recording so you don't miss a minute. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
See everyone.